The siren's shriek tore through the ruined city, a banshee wail echoing off shattered skyscrapers. Rain slicked the streets, reflecting the inferno that consumed the horizon. Detective James Gordon, a man whose face was etched with 1,000 sleepless nights, pressed his hand against the comms unit in his ear. Static hissed back, then Commissioner Montoya's voice, strained and distant. "We're losing ground, Jim. There are too many." Gordon crouched behind a overturned patrol car, the acrid smell of ozone and burning concrete filling his lungs. Rounds impacted the armored vehicle with sickening thuds. He peered through a crack in the door. Figures moved in the gloom, their armor sleek and menacing, their movements unnaturally swift. They weren't human. They weren't from Gotham. They weren't even from Earth, not in any way he understood. One moment, the world was on the brink, dealing with its usual array of costumed lunatics and supercriminals. The next, a rift in the sky had torn open, disgorging these things. "How many do we have left?" Gordon barked, his voice raw but steady. His old partner, Harvey Bullock, hunkered beside him, wiping rain from his walrus mustache. Bullock's usually gruff demeanor was replaced by a grim resignation. "Counting the stragglers from Metropolis?" "Maybe 100, Jim," Bullock replied, checking his assault rifle. "Less once these damn invaders find us." He spat, a gesture of defiance against the impossible odds. Gordon's gaze swept over the desperate scene. Civilians huddled in makeshift shelters, their faces pale with terror. Remaining police officers, their uniforms tattered, their faces grim. He was the last bastion of hope in a city that had already fallen. Batman was gone, lost to whatever dimension or timeline the rift had opened. Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, all the heavy hitters had vanished, swallowed by the initial chaos, or perhaps pulled into the maw of the invaders' own realm. All that remained were the foot soldiers, the ordinary men and women of the law, trying to hold a crumbling line. Subscribe now for more dark Gotham tales. "No," Gordon said, his voice a low growl. "We don't lose ground. We retake it." He knew it was a lie, a desperate whisper against the hurricane, but it was a lie they all needed to hear. "Montoya, what's the status of the power grid? Can we get any lights back on?" "Negative, Jim," Montoya's voice crackled. "They hit the main relays first. Total blackout outside of emergency generators. We're blind." A new sound joined the symphony of destruction, a guttural roar, deep and resonant, unlike anything Gordon had heard. It wasn't the invaders. This sound carried a primal, untamed fury. It ripped through the already fractured night, sending shivers down the spines of even the battle-hardened officers. It was a roar of pain, of rage, and of something utterly alien. Then a shape detached itself from the shadows of a collapsed building. It was immense, a towering figure that moved with a strange, lumbering grace. Its skin was grey, ridged with intricate red tattoos that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Its eyes burned with an unsettling intensity. It carried two massive curved blades, easily the size of a man. This was not one of the invaders. This was something else entirely. A new enemy? Or a new horror? Gordon didn't know, but his hand instinctively went to his sidearm, even as the monstrous figure turned, its gaze sweeping over the desperate human resistance, then locking onto the sleek, armored invaders. The roar came again, a challenge, a declaration of war. The hulking figure, his name Drax, landed heavily in the rain-soaked street, the impact cracking the already shattered pavement. His ship, or rather the remnant of it, had exploded upon entering this strange new universe. The portal had been unstable, a consequence of his relentless pursuit of Thanos, a chase that had led him not to his sworn enemy, but to a world tearing itself apart. His memory of the arrival was a kaleidoscope of agony and blinding light. Now the overwhelming sensory input was a fresh assault. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. The ground trembled beneath his feet with distant explosions, and the cries of the soft-skinned beings filled with fear grated on his heightened senses. He saw them then, the armored creatures, their weapons spitting streams of plasma. These were not Thanos' forces. Their armor was different, their tactics less precise. They were brutish, efficient, but lacked the cold, calculating cruelty of the Mad Titan's legions. Yet they were destroyers, and destruction, Drax knew, was an enemy. A flicker of light caught his eye. A small, dark figure, barely taller than Drax's knee, moved with surprising speed, using the chaos as cover. The figure was clad in black with sharp, pointed ears. It was a warrior Drax instinctively recognized, but of a different order. Its movements were fluid, its attacks swift and silent, unlike the loud, clumsy tactics of the other soft-skinned beings who fired their projectile weapons from behind cover. Drax watched for a moment, assessing. The black-clad warrior moved like a phantom, striking from the shadows, incapacitating the armored creatures with brutal efficiency. Yet even this warrior was overwhelmed. More of the armored creatures poured into the street, their numbers seemingly endless. Cowards. Drax boomed, his voice a rumble that shook the wet pavement. He lifted his two knives, their edges gleaming in the faint, flickering light. You prey on the weak. You are not worthy of this fight. He charged, a blur of grey muscle and flashing blades. The armored creatures turned, their weapons swiveling to face this new, unexpected threat. Drax ignored the plasma bolts that whizzed past him. His skin, naturally dense and durable, offered resistance. One bolt grazed his shoulder, searing a line across his flesh, but he barely registered the pain. Pain was a familiar companion. His knives carved through the air, driven by pure, unadulterated rage. The first armored creature exploded into a shower of sparks and synthetic blood as Drax's blade bisected it. The second met a similar fate, its head severed from its body with a single sweeping motion. Drax fought with a savage grace, a whirlwind of destruction. He did not dodge or parry. He advanced, absorbing blows, delivering death. The creatures hesitated, their coordinated advance faltering as Drax carved a bloody path through their ranks. This new enemy was unlike any they had encountered. It was fearless, relentless, and possessed a strength that defied their projections. They adapted, trying to surround him, to use their superior numbers, but Drax was a force of nature, an unstoppable storm. He saw the black-clad warrior momentarily pause, observing him. A silent question passed between them, one warrior recognizing another amidst the slaughter. Drax merely grunted, a wordless communication that meant, there is no time for talk. Only battle. As more invaders descended from the sky in their sleek, terrifying craft, Drax felt a surge of grim satisfaction. More enemies, more to fight. He roared again, a challenge to the heavens, to the encroaching darkness. He had found a new war. The sight of the grey giant was a gut punch to James Gordon's already frayed nerves. One moment they were losing, barely holding on. The next, a new, massive combatant had entered the fray, ripping through the invaders like they were made of paper. This was not a hero. This was a force of nature, a living weapon of devastating power. What in God's name is that? Bullock whispered, his eyes wide, reflecting the distant flames. He lowered his rifle, momentarily forgotten. The grey giant fought with a terrifying simplicity, a directness that bordered on primal. It wasn't tactical. It was pure, unadulterated destruction. "I don't know, Harvey," Gordon replied, his voice a low tremor. He felt a mixture of awe and fear. This creature, whatever it was, had arrived from the same anomaly that brought the invaders. Could it be another invader? A rogue element? But it was fighting them. That much was clear. The plasma blasts from the invaders, lethal to humans, seemed to merely sting the giant. It roared, it slashed, it tore. Bodies of the armored creatures piled up around it. He's saving us, a young officer, fresh out of the academy, murmured in disbelief. Gordon didn't respond. Saving them? Or merely engaging in its own brutal war? He watched as the grey giant, whom he silently dubbed the Destroyer, slammed its fist into the ground, sending a shockwave that threw several armored invaders off their feet. Then, with a grunt, it ripped a section of pavement from the street, wielding it like a massive shield, deflecting a volley of plasma. Suddenly, a voice crackled in Gordon's ear. Not Montoya's, but a new, deeper one, distorted by static. "Gordon, do you copy? This is Oracle. Do not engage the anomaly. I repeat, do not engage. Oracle." Barbara Gordon, still operating, even in the depths of this nightmare. Gordon felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the chilling precision of her words. Anomaly, she knew. Or at least she had intelligence. Oracle, status report, Gordon demanded, clutching his ear. "What is that thing? Is it with them?" "Negative, Jim," Oracle replied, her voice now clearer, though still strained. "Preliminary scans indicate its energy signature is wildly different from the invaders. It's off the charts. We believe it arrived through the same trans-dimensional rift, but its intent appears hostile to the invaders." There was a pause. "And perhaps to everything else." Gordon's blood ran cold. "To everything else? A neutral force? A chaotic element that simply fought?" That was almost worse than a clear enemy. At least with an enemy, you knew where the lines were. Can you communicate with it? Gordon pressed, watching the Destroyer tear through another wave of invaders. "Attempting," Oracle said, "but its physiology is unlike anything in our databases. We're working on a universal translator patch, but it's a long shot. Right now, it's reacting purely on instinct or perhaps a programmed directive. The thought was unsettling. Was this creature a weapon? Just then, a flash of black streaked past Gordon's position. It was the Batman, or what was left of him. The figure Gordon had seen fighting silently in the shadows. His cape was torn, his cowl chipped, but his movements were still precise, still deadly. He moved towards the Destroyer, not with aggression, but with a cautious approach. The Destroyer, in the midst of dismembering an invader, paused, its head tilted, its red eyes fixing on the smaller, darker figure. A moment of silence stretched between them, a bizarre standoff in the heart of the chaos. Then the Batman did something unexpected. He extended a gloved hand, palm open, a gesture of truce, or perhaps inquiry. The Destroyer let out another guttural roar, this one less of rage and more of uncertainty. It did not immediately attack. A tense stillness hung in the air, broken only by the distant sounds of battle and the incessant rain. Gordon knew, with a chilling certainty, that this moment, this strange meeting, would determine the fate of what little remained of their resistance. The dark, cloaked warrior approached with a strange quietness, its movements like shadows dancing on the edge of Drax's perception. Drax watched, his mind processing the nuances of its stance, its breathing, the subtle tension in its form. It was a warrior, yes, but not like the others. This one carried itself with a weight, a quiet authority. It raised a hand, palm open, a gesture Drax had seen before, a sign of non-aggression among certain species. But Drax trusted few gestures. He trusted only actions. "You are not with them." The warrior's voice was a low growl, rough, as if unused. It was not a question. It was a statement. The universal translator Oracle was attempting to implement must have finally kicked in. Drax heard it not in his own language, but in a strange, resonant tongue that nonetheless conveyed meaning. "They are weak," Drax rumbled back, his own voice sounding foreign to his ears through the translation. "They destroy without purpose." "I destroy destroyers." The warrior seemed to process this, its masked face unreadable. "Your arrival was disruptive. You tore a hole in the sky, Drax scoffed.
My arrival was an accident.
I hunted a monster. I found many. He gestured with a blade towards the invaders. These are lesser monsters, but they are still monsters. A moment of tense silence passed. The sounds of battle continued around them, but in their immediate vicinity, an odd calm had settled. The invaders seemed hesitant to approach the two formidable figures now conversing. "We are overwhelmed," the warrior stated, its gaze sweeping over the ravaged cityscape. "They come in endless waves. Our world is falling," Drax understood. He had seen countless worlds fall, had contributed to the fall of a few himself in his earlier, more savage days. "And you must fight harder," he declared, his voice firm. "Or perish." The warrior took a step closer. "My name is Batman." "Who are you?" "I am Drax, the Destroyer." Drax did not offer his hand. Such formalities were irrelevant. "And I have found a new purpose." He raised his blades. "To destroy those who bring destruction." Batman seemed to absorb this. His helmeted head dipped slightly, almost imperceptibly. "You fight with ferocity." "Fighting is what I do," Drax stated simply. "It is my nature. My existence is defined by it." He looked at Batman. "You also fight. You are a warrior, but you hide your face." "Why?" Batman paused. "To be a symbol. To strike fear." Drax considered this. "Fear is a weapon, but it can be overcome. Destruction is absolute." Before Batman could respond, a new wave of invaders descended. Their craft, larger than the previous ones, opened its belly, disgorging dozens more armored figures. These were different, larger, with heavier weaponry. "A command ship, more targets," Drax observed, a grim satisfaction in his voice. He spun his blades, ready for the fresh challenge. "Wait!" Batman said, his voice sharp. "They are targeting the civilians. They are pushing towards the last refugee shelters." Drax looked where Batman indicated. Indeed, the new invaders were not immediately engaging them. They were moving swiftly, directly towards the clustered, terrified humans. "Cowards," Drax snarled. "They attack the defenseless." He despised such tactics. His code, however brutal, had a certain honor. He would face his enemies directly. To harm the weak was beneath even his rage. "We need to stop them," Batman stated, his voice devoid of emotion, but with an undeniable urgency. "They will kill everyone in those shelters if they reach them." Drax nodded, a rare moment of agreement with another being. "Then we destroy them before they complete their cowardly act." Without another word, Drax moved. He was a grey missile hurtling towards the new threat. Batman, surprisingly, kept pace, a dark blur beside him. Two forces of destruction, one primal, one precise, united against a common enemy. The fight for Gotham, for this strange new world, had just taken an impossible turn. Detective Gordon watched the bizarre alliance unfold with a mixture of disbelief and growing dread. Batman, moving in sync with the towering alien known as Drax, was a sight he never thought he'd witness. One, a creature of the night, a symbol of justice in the shadows. The other, an unadulterated engine of destruction, a blunt instrument of overwhelming force. "Oracle, were you seeing this?" Gordon mumbled into his comms. "Batman and Drax, they're working together." "Affirmative, Jim. It's unprecedented," Oracle's voice replied, a hint of awe in her usually analytical tone. "Their combined combat data is off the charts. They're carving a path through the enemy lines that our forces couldn't even dream of." But Gordon knew the cost of dreams. He also knew the cost of desperation. What happens when the invaders are gone, Oracle? What happens when Drax runs out of targets? A moment of silence. "That is a significant concern, Jim. My analysis indicates Drax's primary drive is destruction of hostile elements. If this world is deemed hostile, or if he perceives a threat from us," Gordon didn't need to hear the rest. He understood. This temporary alliance was built on sand, on the momentary convergence of two distinct, equally dangerous forces. He shifted his attention back to the battle. Drax was a whirlwind of motion, his blades tearing through the heavier armored invaders with brutal efficiency. Batman, meanwhile, moved with surgical precision, disabling weapons, exploiting weaknesses, creating openings for Drax to exploit. It was a terrifyingly effective partnership. An invader, larger than the rest, its armor gleaming with command insignia, locked onto Drax. It raised a massive energy cannon, charging a blast that shimmered with destructive power. "Drax incoming!" Batman's voice, relayed through Oracle's channel, cut through the comms. Drax, without breaking stride, simply turned his shoulder slightly. The energy blast impacted, exploding in a blinding flash of light. When the smoke cleared, Drax stood firm, his skin scorched but unbroken, a grimace on his face. He snarled, then charged the commander, ignoring the other invaders that tried to intercept him. "Impossible," Bullock breathed, wiping rain from his eyes. "That thing, it just tanked a heavy energy blast like it was nothing." "It's not human, Harvey," Gordon reminded him, though the obvious statement felt insufficient. Drax reached the commander, his blades a blur. The invader, despite its size and heavy armor, was no match. Drax disarmed it, then, with a horrifyingly casual motion, ripped its arm from its socket. The invader shrieked, a sound more mechanical than organic, before Drax plunged his blade through its chest. The remaining invaders faltered, their advanced tactics breaking down into panicked retreats. They had never encountered such raw, unbridled power. Their strategy had been predicated on overwhelming numbers and superior technology, not on an adversary that could ignore their most potent weapons. "They're falling back," a police officer shouted, a note of triumph in his voice. "They're actually retreating!" But Gordon knew better. This wasn't a retreat. It was a tactical reorganization. The invaders were not stupid. They had encountered an unforeseen variable and were adapting. "Oracle, well, what's their next move?" Gordon asked, his gaze fixed on the retreating enemy forces. "Analyzing their energy signatures are consolidating around the central rift point," Oracle replied, her voice now filled with a new, colder dread. "They're not just retreating, Jim. They're reinforcing, and something much larger is coming through." The air around the anomaly, still tearing a hole in the sky above the city, began to churn. The dark clouds thickened, swirling with unnatural energy. A low hum, deeper and more resonant than anything heard before, vibrated through the very ground. The sound intensified, building to a deafening roar. Drax and Batman paused, both looking up at the sky. Drax's eyes narrowed, a primal recognition on his face. Batman's stance shifted, becoming even more guarded. Then, from the roiling storm, a new shape emerged. It was colossal, dwarfing the previous craft, an immense war barge bristling with weaponry. It was a battleship made manifest, sleek and terrifying, designed for planetary conquest, and as it fully cleared the rift, its vast shadow falling over the city, a single, clear voice boomed from its belly, translated perfectly by Oracle's struggling systems, reverberating through every comms unit, every speaker. "Every terrified mind in Gotham, this world is chosen. Resistance is futile. Prepare for true subjugation." The voice was cold, imperious, laced with a casual cruelty that made the hair on Gordon's arms stand up. It was the voice of a conqueror, confident in its victory. Drax roared back, a challenge born of pure defiance, his blades held high. Batman stood silent beside him, a dark silhouette against the monstrous ship, but the resolve in his posture was absolute. Gordon felt a knot tighten in his gut. The fight had only just begun, and whatever was coming next, it was going to be an extinction-level event. The massive war barge hung in the sky, a metallic leviathan that blotted out the fractured moon. Its dark underbelly rippled with dormant energy, and countless weapon emplacements dotted its surface like malevolent eyes. From its central viewport, a figure emerged, suspended by an unseen force, descending slowly towards the ravaged streets below. It was larger than the common invaders, its armor a deeper obsidian black, adorned with crimson lines that pulsed faintly. Its helmet was sleek, devoid of features save for a single, glowing red visor that seemed to pierce the very soul. "My name is Xylos," the voice boomed again, no longer translated through a comms unit, but resonating directly in Gordon's mind, a psychic intrusion that made his teeth ache. "I am the first scion of the Void, harbinger of the conflux. Your defiance is noted. It is also irrelevant," Gordon stumbled back, clutching his head. Bullock beside him cursed, his face contorted in pain. The voice wasn't just audible, it was felt. It twisted something deep inside, a chilling certainty of doom. Drax merely snarled, a low, primal sound that cut through the psychic assault. He raised his blades, the gesture, one of pure, unadulterated challenge. Batman stood, unwavering, a silhouette of grim determination, his cape whipping in the sudden, violent winds stirred by Xylos's descent. "A simple beast, and a masked rodent," Xylos stated, his red visor scanning the two figures. "Such pathetic opposition. You think your primitive strength can halt the inevitable? Our purpose transcends your paltry existence." As Xylos finished speaking, the war barge rumbled. From ports along its sides, smaller craft, sleek and predatory, poured forth, each carrying a squadron of invaders. They descended rapidly, not in a disorganized mob, but in precise formations, targeting key defensive positions held by Gordon's dwindling forces. The ground trembled as the first waves landed, their plasma weapons already spitting fire. "Jim, they're bypassing us!" Montoya's voice crackled, laced with fresh panic. "They're hitting the secondary refugee points. We can't hold them." Gordon looked around, his mind racing. Their makeshift barricades, already weakened, would crumble under this concentrated assault. The new invaders were larger, faster, and their armor seemed to deflect even their heavier rounds. "Oracle, any weaknesses on that central ship? Or Xylos?" Gordon demanded, his eyes fixed on the descending alien commander. "Working on it, Jim. Their technology is light years beyond anything we've catalogued," Oracle responded, her voice tight with strain. "Xylos's psychic signature is immense. Trying to block the comms intrusion, but it's difficult." Xylos landed softly, a few dozen yards from Drax and Batman. The impact sent out no shockwave, yet the ground seemed to shudder in deference. Two hulking, heavily armed invaders, personal guards, positioned themselves behind him. Their weapons were unlike the plasma rifles of the others, longer, thicker, pulsating with an ominous blue light. "Your planet is rich in resources, suitable for the conflux," Xylos declared, his voice echoing not just in their minds, but in the very air, vibrating the broken concrete. "Your life forms, however, are inefficient." "They will be repurposed!" Drax let out a furious roar and charged. He was not one for subtlety or negotiation. His blades, gleaming with a deadly light, were aimed directly at Xylos. Batman moved with him, a dark shadow flanking the grey giant. But with a different objective, he aimed for the two guards, seeking to create an opening. "Fools," Xylos sneered. He did not move. As Drax closed the distance, the ground around Xylos shimmered. A powerful energy field erupted, pushing Drax back with an invisible force. He slid several feet, his boots carving furrows in the pavement, before digging in and pushing against the field. He grunted, muscles straining, but he could not break through. At the same time, Batman's grappling hook fired, latching onto the arm of one of Xylos's guards. He swung, delivering a powerful kick to the invader's head, staggering it. The other guard immediately spun its heavy weapon, aiming for Batman. Before it could fire, Batman was a blur, disarming it with a precise strike to its weapon arm, then throwing a flurry of rapid, calculated blows. Drax, still straining against the invisible barrier, roared in frustration. He began striking at the energy field with his blades, sparks flying, but it held firm. "Your strength is admirable for a primitive," Xylos observed, unaffected. "But brute force cannot overcome true power." He raised a hand, and the energy field pulsed brighter, pushing Drax further back. "Jim," their heavy craft are targeting the central command post. Montoya yelled over the comms, static fighting to overwhelm her voice. "We're losing ground everywhere." Gordon saw it. The invaders weren't just attacking, they were systematically dismantling their remaining infrastructure. He watched in horror as a precision strike from one of the new craft incinerated the building where Montoya and her skeleton crew were operating. The comms went dead. "Montoya! Commissioner!" Gordon screamed into his unit, but only static replied. His heart plummeted. They were cut off. They were truly alone. "We need to create a diversion." Gordon barked to Bullock, his voice raw with grief and desperation. "Draw their fire away from the civilians. Buy Batman and Drax some time." Bullock didn't hesitate. "You heard the boss? Lay down suppressing fire. Keep them busy." The remaining officers, fueled by a fresh wave of despair and rage, opened fire, their projectile weapons largely ineffective against the new, heavier armor, but forcing the invaders to acknowledge them. It was a suicide mission, and they knew it on Xylos's front. Batman had disabled one guard and was locked in a brutal melee with the other, deflecting its powerful blows with his gauntlets, looking for an opening. He moved with impossible speed, a dark whirlwind against the towering invader. "You waste your efforts, Masked One," Xylos stated, his red visor still fixed on Drax. "The beast is contained, and soon you will be too." With a sudden, powerful mental push, Xylos focused his psychic energy. Drax screamed, a sound of agony as the invisible force slammed into his mind, pushing deeper than just his physical form. He dropped his blades, clutching his head, his powerful body racked with tremors. He was on his knees, grunting, struggling against the unseen assault. Batman, seeing Drax's distress, disengaged from his fight, throwing a smoke pellet to blind the remaining guard. He moved towards Xylos, a silent predator, ignoring the mental pressure. His gauntlet shimmered as he prepared his attack. "Such defiance," Xylos murmured, a hint of disdain in his voice. He shifted his attention from Drax to Batman, a flicker of surprise in his mental presence. "An interesting specimen. You have no innate psychic defenses, yet you resist my influence." As Batman lunged, Xylos merely extended a hand. A wave of pure kinetic energy slammed into Batman, throwing him back with incredible force. He tumbled, hitting the ground hard, his costume tearing, his movements momentarily stunned. He grunted, pushing himself up, but his ribs screamed in protest. "Your primitive technology cannot stop me," Xylos said, his tone chillingly calm. "Nor can your stubborn will." He began to walk towards the fallen Batman, his guards recovering, moving to flank him. "The conflux will consume this world. It is its destiny." "And yours." Just then, a voice echoed in Gordon's mind, weak but clear. It was Oracle. "Jim, I've got a read on Xylos. His armor, it's a psionic amplifier. The power source is linked to his neural network, channeling his mental energy into kinetic and force fields. If you can disrupt the flow." "How, Oracle?" Gordon screamed, his voice hoarse. He's practically invulnerable. His focus." Oracle replied, her voice now fading, clearly struggling against Xylos's influence. "He needs to concentrate to maintain the most powerful fields. If you can overwhelm his sensors, create enough chaos, a precise, high-energy impact might destabilize the armor's integrity." Gordon understood. Create a distraction, hit him with everything they had, and hope it was enough. But they had nothing left. No heavy ordnance, no super weapons. just their small arms and dwindling hope. "Harvey, listen to me," Gordon yelled, fighting the pain in his own head. "We need every single light source we have.
Emergency lights, car headlights, searchlights, anything. Point them at Xylos.
And every last bullet we have, every last rocket aimed at that son of a bitch." Bullock looked at him, disbelief warring with grim resolve.
Jim, that's suicide.
"We've got barely any power left,"
It's our only chance.
Gordon roared.
Distract him. Confuse him.
By Batman a window. The officers, seeing the desperation in Gordon's eyes, began to act. Sirens, already blaring, were cranked to their highest pitch. Headlights of abandoned vehicles were flicked on, casting stark, flickering beams into the rain-streaked night. Makeshift searchlights, jury-rigged from emergency generators, strained to focus their weak light on Xylos. The chaotic, blinding light assaulted Xylos' visor, and the cacophony of sirens began to break through the psychic hum in their minds. Xylos paused, his head tilting slightly. What is this primitive annoyance? He flickered his hand, and several of the lights exploded, but the effort clearly cost him a fraction of his concentration. It was the opening Batman needed. He launched himself forward again, not aiming for Xylos directly, but for the weakened energy field that still held Drax. He produced a device from his belt, a highly concentrated sonic emitter. With a flash, he activated it, unleashing a focused burst of high-frequency sound directly at the field. The energy barrier shimmered violently, crackling, then briefly sputtered. It wasn't enough to shatter it, but it was enough for Drax, who, still reeling from the psychic attack, saw his chance. With a roar of pure, animalistic fury, he pushed with everything he had, and the field buckled, then exploded outwards in a shower of sparks, momentarily disorienting Xylos and his guards. Drax was free. He ignored his throbbing head, ignored the pain. His singular focus on Xylos, he lunged, scooping up his dropped blades, pure rage propelling him forward. Xylos, surprised by the combined assault, had to split his concentration. He raised a hand to ward off Drax, while simultaneously preparing another kinetic blast for Batman. This momentary division of his focus was critical. As Drax's blades carved towards him, Xylos formed a partial energy shield, but it wasn't as strong as before. Drax's powerful blow struck the shield, causing it to ripple and crack, though it still held. But it bought Batman the fraction of a second he needed. He fired his grappling hook again, not at Xylos, but at the underside of the war barge, soaring upwards. The two guards, recovering from the blast, scrambled to intercept him, firing their blue energy weapons. Batman, a master of aerial combat, twisted and turned, using the ship itself as cover, dodging the deadly blasts. "They're working together, Jim," Bullock yelled, a flicker of hope in his voice as he emptied his rifle at the advancing invaders.
It's actually working. Keep the lights on him. Keep the pressure up.
Gordon commanded, his own sidearm blazing, picking off an invader that got too close. Meanwhile, Drax unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks against Xylos' weakened shield. Each blow, each furious strike, chipped away at the alien commander's concentration. The ground around them fissured, debris flying as their titanic struggle unfolded. Xylos, for the first time, showed a hint of frustration.
Insolent vermin.
You cling to life with such tenacity. He pushed back with a surge of psychic energy, forcing Drax to momentarily recoil.
Your resistance is futile.
My ship, the Conflux Enforcer, carries enough power to scour this entire continent. As Xylos boasted, Batman reached the underside of the war barge. He wasn't aiming for the central control, he was aiming for something else. He produced a series of compact, high-frequency sonic disruptors from his utility belt, attaching them to exposed conduits and power couplings on the ship's underbelly. These weren't designed to destroy, but to interfere, to create feedback loops and destabilize systems. Back on the ground, Drax roared, overcoming the psychic push and lunged again, this time aiming a powerful kick at Xylos' midsection. The kick connected with the energy shield, sending a visible shockwave through it. Xylos stumbled back a step, clearly unprepared for such raw, focused physical power. At that precise moment, the sonic disruptors Batman had planted activated. A piercing, high-pitched whine erupted from the war barge, echoing through the city. The entire ship began to hum erratically, its lights flickering, its weapon emplacements sputtering. The effect wasn't immediately catastrophic, but it was clearly causing disruption. Xylos screamed, a guttural sound of pure rage and pain. Not psychic, but physical. The sonic frequencies, amplified through his own psionic armor, were tearing at his internal systems. He dropped his energy shield completely, clutching his helmeted head with both hands. My armor.
You fool. What have you done? Xylos shrieked, his voice no longer imperious but filled with agony. This was the opening. Now, Jim! Oracle's voice, barely a whisper, sliced through Gordon's mind. He's exposed. Hit him with everything.
Gordon didn't need to be told twice. Focus fire on Xylos.
Everyone, do it now!
He bellowed, his voice raw. The remaining police officers, seeing their chance, poured every last bullet, every last rocket, every last laser pulse from salvaged invader weapons they had into the flailing Xylos. It was a desperate, uncoordinated barrage, but the sheer volume of fire was unprecedented. Drax, seeing Xylos momentarily vulnerable, didn't hesitate. He launched himself forward, his blades held high, a terrifying whirlwind of grey muscle and fury. He smashed through Xylos' recovering guards, leaving them battered and broken, and brought his two massive knives down in a double-fisted strike aimed squarely at Xylos' chest, where the crimson lines pulsed brightest. The impact was devastating. The armor, weakened by the sonic assault and the flurry of conventional weapons fire, cracked and groaned under Drax's titanic blow. A blinding flash of crimson energy erupted from Xylos' chest plate as the armor's internal systems, overloaded and destabilized, exploded. Xylos shrieked, a sound of pure agony and disbelief. His obsidian armor shattered, peeling away from his form in jagged shards. Beneath, a creature of pale, almost translucent flesh was revealed, its eyes glowing with a malevolent, sickly green light. It was smaller, frailer than its armored form suggested, but its eyes still burned with immense power. You dare!" Xylos hissed, his voice now a raspy whisper, but the psychic pressure remained, albeit weakened. He tried to lash out, a desperate, fading surge of mental energy, but it was feeble compared to his previous might. Drax, however, was relentless. He did not pause. He did not hesitate. His mission was clear: destroy destroyers. With a final guttural roar, he plunged his remaining blade deep into Xylos' exposed chest. The pale creature screamed, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of reality, then went utterly still. The green light in its eyes faded, and its form began to dissolve, crumbling into dust that scattered in the rain. A moment of stunned silence descended upon the battlefield. The psychic pressure vanished. The errant hum of the war barge began to subside, its flickering lights stabilizing, though it still gave off an ominous, low thrum. The invading forces scattered across the city suddenly paused, their movements becoming disorganized, confused. Their coordinated assault faltered. Gordon stared, disbelieving, at the spot where Xylos had been. He was dead. They had actually done it. They had killed the leader. The enemy commander is down. Oracle's voice, clear and strong now, echoed through the comms. Their forces are in disarray. Their central command structure has collapsed. A wave of delirious relief washed over Gordon. He looked at Bullock, who had dropped his rifle and was staring, open-mouthed, at Drax, who stood, panting over the dust. his blades dripping with a strange, oily black substance that had been Xylos's blood.
Holy crap, Bullock managed, tears streaming down his face, whether from the rain or something else. Gordon couldn't tell. They actually won. The invaders, leaderless and without direction, began to fall back, not retreating in
an orderly fashion but scattering, fleeing into the shattered cityscape. Some even turned on each other in their panic. The war barge, however, remained. It hovered ominously, its systems still functioning, its weapons still primed, though now silent. It was a giant, headless monster, still capable of immense destruction. "Oracle, what about the ship?" Gordon asked, his voice still shaky with adrenaline. "Is it going to self-destruct? Drop on us?" "Unknown, Jim," Oracle replied, a note of caution in her voice. Its core systems seem to be automated, but without Xylos, it lacks a central directive.
"It's dormant. For now." Drax turned, his gaze sweeping over the retreating invaders, then back to the colossal ship. He let out a low growl, a sound of grim satisfaction. His immediate target was gone. Batman landed softly beside him, his movements
still precise, though a slight limp betrayed the brutal fight he had just endured. He looked at Drax, then at the war barge. "The fight is not over," he stated, his voice raspy. "They will reorganize, and that ship, it is a lingering threat." Drax grunted in agreement. A ship without a pilot is still a threat, a weapon still a weapon. He gestured with a blade towards the retreating invaders. "And the lesser monsters still live. The conflux, as Xylos called it, is not defeated by the death of one." Gordon felt the euphoria of victory begin to recede, replaced by a cold, hard dose of reality. They had won a battle, not the war. Xylos was dead, but his forces remained, and the colossal ship still hung above them, a sword of Damocles. "He's right," Gordon said, picking up his comms unit. "Oracle, can you get a read on the conflux? What
is it? Where is it coming from?" "I'm patching into their comms network now, Jim," Oracle replied, her voice filled with renewed determination.
The surge from Xylos's death seems to have opened a momentary back door. I'm seeing coordinates, distant, and a massive energy signature. This isn't just an invasion, Jim, it's a migration. They're coming for this entire galaxy." Gordon felt a chill deeper than the rain. A migration, an entire alien civilization moving towards them, led by an entity or force called the Conflux. Xylos was just the vanguard. Drax looked at Batman. "More targets," he stated, a grim satisfaction in his tone. Batman merely nodded, his gaze fixed on the war barge. "We need to disable that ship, permanently." He turned to Gordon. "Detective, do you have any engineers, any demolition experts still operational?" Gordon hesitated. "We have a few, what's left of Wayne Enterprises' R&D division, but they're sheltering. And how do we even get on board that thing?" "I do," Batman replied, looking at Drax. "And I have a plan, but we'll need the destroyer's strength, and we'll need a distraction, a big one." Drax met his gaze, a glint of savage eagerness in his red eyes. "I am always ready for a distraction. What is your plan, Masked One?" Batman's voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it carried absolute authority. "We're going to use their own weapon against them. We're going to turn the Conflux Enforcer into a bomb, and we're going to aim it at the Rift." Gordon's jaw dropped. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was the only way. "Jim," Oracle's voice cut in, urgency in her tone. "I've detected a massive energy signature building at the Rift itself. It's not another ship. It's a portal stabilization attempt. They're trying to widen the Rift, to bring more through." Batman's head snapped up, his gaze meeting Drax's. "Then we don't have much time." Drax gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Good. I do not enjoy waiting. Oracle, can you get us a schematic?"
Of that ship? Its core reactor? Any vulnerabilities? Batman asked, already moving.
"Working on it, Batman. It's highly complex, but I'm getting preliminary schematics from their comms data. I'll patch them to your Cowl and Jim's comms," Oracle responded, her fingers flying across her keyboards halfway across the city. Gordon watched them, two impossible heroes, one a primal force, the other a calculating genius, preparing for an impossible mission. His remaining officers were still catching their breath, some openly weeping in relief. But the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. They had merely bought themselves a few precious moments before the true storm arrived. "All right, everyone," Gordon shouted, his voice finding new strength.
The fight's not over. We buy them time. We hold the line. Every invader you see, you hit them with everything you've got. Don't let them near the rift. Don't let them near the ship." A renewed roar went up from the exhausted, battered police officers.
They might be outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered, but they still had a city to protect, a world to defend. Batman turned to Drax. "It's a long climb, and it will be heavily defended. Are you ready, Destroyer?" Drax met his gaze, his red eyes burning with a familiar, terrifying intensity.
"I am always ready to destroy." With that, Batman fired his grappling hook at the side of the towering war barge, soaring upwards into the rain-slicked night. Drax, with a powerful leap, propelled himself after him, his immense form a grey blur against the black metal.
They were two unlikely figures ascending into the heart of the enemy, a desperate last stand to save a world they barely knew. Gordon watched them go, then turned his attention back to the streets where the scattered invaders, slowly recovering from their disarray, were beginning to regroup. He raised his sidearm, the weight of the world heavy on his shoulders, and fired the first shot. The Conflux Enforcer hummed, a low, ominous sound, as Batman and Drax climbed its formidable hull. The rain, still relentless, made the metallic surfaces slick and treacherous, but neither warrior seemed to notice. Batman moved with the silent grace of a shadow, finding purchase on minute structural elements, his grappling hook a lifeline into the hostile void. Drax, with his immense strength, simply gripped the massive, riveted plates, pulling himself up with powerful, deliberate movements, each heave a testament to his sheer physical might. "Oracle, any external weapon emplacements on this section?" Batman's voice was a low murmur in Gordon's comms, relayed from Oracle's end. "Affirmative, Batman," Oracle replied, her voice now crisp and professional. "You're approaching a series of short-range plasma turrets. They're designed for defense against smaller, faster craft. Expect automated targeting." As if on cue, a small circular turret swiveled into view above them, its single eye glowing ominously. A high-pitched whine preceded a burst of plasma fire that streaked past Batman's head, searing the air. "Drax!" Batman barked, already moving. Drax, without a moment's hesitation, shifted his trajectory. He ignored the plasma blasts that peppered the hull around him, instead focusing his immense strength into a single, upward leap. His hand, as large as a man's torso, slammed into the turret's base, ripping it clean from the hull with a sickening screech of tortured metal. He hurled the twisted mass into the darkness below, then resumed his climb as if nothing had happened. "Efficient," Batman commented, a rare hint of approval in his tone. "However, we need to minimize exposure. Oracle, identify nearest entry point that bypasses heavy internal security. Searching, there's a maintenance hatch, approximately 100 meters above your current position, slightly to the starboard side. Minimal internal defenses, mostly environmental seals. It's an access point for external sensor arrays." Oracle replied. Understood. Batman adjusted his grapple, aiming for a higher strut. Drax, follow my lead.
This will require stealth, Drax grunted.
Stealth is for cowards.
I will smash what stands in our way. Stealth is for precision, Batman corrected, his voice firm.
We need to get to the core. Mindless destruction takes too long. Drax remained silent for a moment, then, surprisingly, nodded. Very well. For now, I will be precise. They continued their ascent, Batman leading the way, Drax following with a reluctant but effective quietness. They encountered a few more automated defenses which Drax dealt with using brute force, but always under Batman's precise direction. One instance, a laser grid across a section of the hull, was disabled by Batman precisely timing a Batarang to hit a control panel just as Drax charged through an adjacent,
unguarded section. Finally, they reached the maintenance hatch.
It was a thick, circular plate of dark metal integrated seamlessly into the hull. Batman produced a series of intricate tools from his belt,
already analyzing the locking mechanisms. Heavy gauge,
multi-frequency locking system, Batman murmured, his gloved fingers dancing over the panel. Looks like it's designed to withstand extreme cosmic radiation and vacuum breaches. Can you open it? Drax asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. It will take time, Batman replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a loud thrumming echoed from within the ship. A section of the hull above them began to glow, and a smaller auxiliary hatch slid open. From within, 2 more armored invaders emerged, their blue energy weapons already powered up, aiming down at them. These were heavier units, clearly designated for internal security, their armor thicker, their movements more deliberate. Intruders detected, one of them rasped, its voice synthesized and cold.
Terminate with extreme prejudice, Drax snarled.
More targets! He launched himself towards them, his blades a blur.
This was his element. Drax, hold them off!
Batman commanded, not even looking up from his work.
Don't let them near this hatch!
The battle on the hull was brutal. Drax, despite his immense power, was facing formidable opponents. Their blue energy weapons were more potent than the plasma rifles, and their armor, while not as durable as Xylos's, could withstand several direct hits from Drax's blades before faltering. He moved with savage efficiency, parrying with one blade, striking with the other, absorbing blows that would pulverize a lesser being. One invader managed to land a powerful energy strike on his shoulder, searing a chunk of his gray skin, but Drax merely grunted, then retaliated with a furious uppercut that ripped the invader's arm clean off. Meanwhile, Batman's fingers flew over the panel.
Locks clicked, circuits buzzed, and finally, with a soft hiss of released pressure, the circular hatch unsealed. Got it, Batman said, then turned, drawing a Batarang. Drax, fall back!
We're in. Drax, having dismembered one invader and severely damaged the other, roared, then with a final crushing blow, sent the second invader sprawling into the abyss below. He turned, his body steaming in the rain, and followed Batman into the breach. The interior of the Conflux Enforcer was a labyrinth of stark metallic corridors lit by a pervasive cold blue light. The air was dry, recycled, and carried a faint metallic tang. The silence inside was unnerving after the constant roar of battle outside. Oracle, we're in, Batman stated, his voice a low whisper. Path to the core reactor. Acknowledged, Batman, Oracle replied, her voice now clear and urgent. The core is deep within the ship, central command hub. It's heavily fortified. My schematics indicate a direct path, but it's likely heavily patrolled. Any alternative routes? Batman asked, already moving, his senses extended, detecting every faint hum and vibration. There's a series of maintenance tunnels, less secure but much more convoluted. They lead to the ventilation shafts, which could get you closer to the reactor chamber, undetected, Oracle suggested. Take the tunnels, Batman decided. Drax, follow me. We avoid direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary. Every moment counts, Drax grumbled, but he followed, his massive frame barely fitting through some of the narrower passages. His red eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, his senses alert to any hidden threats. As they navigated the winding, cramped corridors, Oracle fed them crucial information. The reactor is a multi-stage fusion core utilizing an unknown exotic matter as fuel.
It's incredibly powerful, Batman.
Disabling it will require precise targeting of the primary containment field regulators. And if we destabilize it enough, what's the yield? Batman asked, his voice devoid of emotion, yet the implication was clear. Catastrophic, Oracle confirmed. The entire ship and anything within a several-mile radius would be vaporized, potentially enough to disrupt the rift itself if the energy signature is strong enough. Drax overheard. Good, a grand destruction. They moved with surprising efficiency through the service tunnels. Batman's stealth skills a perfect counter to the ship's internal security. He disarmed laser tripwires, bypassed motion sensors, and even silently dispatched a few patrolling maintenance drones that were too slow to react. Drax provided cover, his immense presence a silent deterrent to any unexpected encounters. However, as they neared the reactor chamber, the tunnels became more cramped, the hum of the core more intense, vibrating through the metal deck plates.
Oracle's voice grew more strained.
Batman, the conflux enforcer, is activating auxiliary power systems. The rift stabilization at their origin point is accelerating. They're preparing for a massive influx.
How much time?
Batman asked. Minutes, Batman.
Maybe 5 at most before the rift is fully widened and a new wave of capital ships comes through.
Oracle's urgency was palpable. We don't have time for stealth anymore, Batman stated. Drax, prepare for battle. They emerged from a narrow ventilation shaft directly into a bustling corridor leading to the reactor chamber. It was filled with invaders, heavily armed and armored, clearly part of the core defense. They were on high alert, their weapons already raised. Intruders,
one of them bellowed. Open fire!
Plasma bolts, blue energy blasts, and concussion rounds filled the corridor. Drax, with a roar, charged forward, meeting the onslaught head-on. His blades became a whirlwind of destruction, cutting through armor and flesh with savage efficiency. He absorbed hits, barely flinching, his focus absolute. Batman, meanwhile, moved like a phantom, a blur in the chaos. He didn't engage in direct combat, instead using smoke pellets, flashbangs, and batarangs to disorient and disable the invaders. Creating openings for Drax, he moved towards the massive, reinforced door that led to the reactor chamber, working feverishly on the locking mechanism. Drax, keep them off me!
Batman commanded, his voice strained. I need time to breach this door.
Drax was a one-man army, his powerful body a shield, his blades a harvesting scythe. Invaders fell before him in droves, their screams cut short by his relentless fury. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and terrifying. The corridor became a slaughterhouse, piled high with shattered armor and alien blood. But more invaders kept pouring in from side corridors, a seemingly endless wave. The sheer numbers were beginning to overwhelm Drax. He was taking more hits, his movements, though still powerful, becoming slightly less fluid. His grey skin was marred with fresh burns and cuts. They are too many, Masked One, Drax roared, slamming an invader against the wall.
This door must open soon. Almost there.
Batman gritted out. Almost there. Batman gritted out, his fingers flying across the alien console. Sparks showered around his gauntlets as he forced the final lock, the reinforced door shuddering under the strain. He could hear Drax's labored breathing, the sickening thuds of impacts, and the alien shouts behind him. The destroyer was a living wall, but even walls crumbled. With a final protesting groan, the massive door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber dominated by a pulsating, crystalline core. Tendrils of raw energy crackled around it, bathing the room in an ethereal blue light. This was it, the heart of the Conflux Enforcer. "Drax, fall back!"
"Into the chamber!"
Batman roared, shoving his remaining explosives into place around the doorframe as he entered. Drax, battered but unbowed, unleashed one last furious barrage, sending several invaders flying, then turned and plunged into the reactor chamber, his heavy boots clanging on the metallic floor. Batman followed, hitting a concealed button on his wrist. The door slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang moments before the explosives detonated, sealing the entrance and showering the corridor with debris. The invaders were temporarily cut off. "Oracle, schematics for the containment field regulators," Batman commanded, already scanning the vast chamber. "On your cow, Batman!" The primary regulators are located at the 3 apex points of the core's energy field.
Oracle's voice, though faint, was a beacon of clarity.
You need to sever their connection to the central conduit, simultaneously if possible. The crystalline core pulsed, humming with an almost sentient power. Above it, 3 massive circular conduits extended, each feeding into a smaller, intricate device, the regulators. They were protected by a shimmering energy shield. "Drax, you take the top left regulator," Batman ordered, pointing. "I'll take the top right. We'll need to disable that shield first." He pulled a trio of specialized batarangs from his belt, each glowing faintly. "These are electromagnetic pulse charges. When I throw mine, you strike the shield with your blades. The EMP will momentarily disrupt the field, giving your physical attack a chance to breach it." Drax nodded, his red eyes narrowed in grim determination. "Understood. Then I destroy the conduit." "Precisely," Batman confirmed. "Once you've severed it, hit the main power junction directly below it. That should begin the overload sequence. Oracle, prepare for remote override once the conduits are severed. We need to aim this ship." "Acknowledged, Batman. I'll need direct access to the ship's navigation and targeting systems, but I'll be ready," Oracle responded. The floor beneath them vibrated violently. The rift, widening in the sky above, was pulling at the Conflux Enforcer.
Outside, the ship shuddered, and through a small viewport,
Batman could see flashes of distant energy, indicating more invaders were trying to breach their position or perhaps engaging the ground forces. "Time is critical,"
Oracle warned.
"The rift is reaching peak instability."
"Another minute and they'll bring something massive through. Now!" Batman yelled.
He launched his EMP batarang. It spun through the air, hitting its target with a bright flash. At the same instant, Drax roared, leaping forward, his blades impacting the shimmering shield with a tremendous clang. The shield flickered, briefly collapsing, and Drax's blades bit deep into the conduit, tearing through the metallic sheathing with a shower of sparks. He then slammed his fist into the junction below, the powerful impact causing a cascade of alarm sirens to blare through the ship. "One down," Drax roared. Batman, meanwhile, had used the distraction to grapple up to his own target. He plunged a powerful sonic disruptor into the top right regulator, twisting it with brutal force. The device sparked violently, then exploded inwards, severing the connection. He then sent a concentrated sonic blast into the power junction, silencing it. "Second conduit severed," Batman reported, his voice tight.
"Oracle the third. I'm patching in now, Batman."
Oracle's voice was strained, but her determination was clear. "I can reroute the last regulator's energy flow and force a feedback loop."
"It's risky. It could destabilize the core prematurely." "Do it!"
Batman ordered, landing beside Drax. "We don't have another option." A moment of agonizing silence. Then, with a high-pitched whine that resonated through the entire ship, the third regulator exploded, showering the chamber with superheated shrapnel. The entire core began to hum erratically, its blue light flickering, turning an ominous shade of crimson. "The core is destabilized," Oracle screamed, her voice barely audible over the ship's dying groans. "Reactor overload initiated."
I'm diverting all remaining power to navigation. It's slow, but I'm trying to align it with the rift's center.
The floor tilted violently. Alarms blared everywhere, flashing red lights illuminating the chaos. Sparks flew from every console, and the air grew thick with ozone. The Conflux Enforcer was tearing itself apart. "We need to go!" Batman shouted over the din, already making for a small emergency exit hatch on the far side of the chamber, revealed by the cascading systems. "What about aiming it?" Drax asked, his red eyes fixed on the rapidly imploding core. "Oracle is handling it," Batman replied, already working on the hatch. Her systems are intertwined with the ship's now. "She'll get it where it needs to go."
"No, my override is failing."
Oracle's voice was a desperate cry. "The core destabilization is overwhelming the navigation systems."
"It's veering off course. It's going to hit Gotham."
Batman froze, his blood running cold.
"Hit Gotham? After all this?" "No, not like this." He looked at the core, now a furious, raging inferno of crimson and blue.
The energy within was building to an unimaginable crescendo. He had a fraction of a second, an impossible decision.
"Oracle, get ready for a direct neural link."
"I need precise control over the ship's thrusters now."
Batman's voice was ice. "Batman, no! You'll be fried."
"The psychic feedback from Xylos' death already nearly broke my systems."
"A direct link to an overloading reactor, it's suicide." Oracle pleaded. "It's the only way."
Batman roared, already moving, ignoring the searing heat and exploding conduits. He sprinted towards the central console, a massive control panel integrated directly into the reactor's framework. Drax, seeing Batman's intent, roared in protest.
"Masked One, no, you will be destroyed. Stay back, Drax. Get out of here! Tell Gordon, tell them it worked."
Batman shouted, slamming his hands onto the console. A network of glowing conduits flared beneath his touch, connecting directly to the ship's systems, to the reactor's dying heart. A blinding white light erupted from the console. Batman screamed, a guttural sound of pure agony as raw energy surged through his nervous system. His body arched, muscles spasming, as his mind wrestled with the dying ship, trying to force it back on course. The cowl's system shrieked in protest, then went dark. "Batman!" Drax bellowed, lunging forward, but the heat was too intense, the energy too wild. He was thrown back, slammed against a bulkhead. "I have control." Oracle's voice, now a strained whisper, echoed faintly in Gordon's comms, then through Drax's mind. He's redirected the primary thrusters.
"He's guiding it."
Gordon, on the ground, watched in horror as the Conflux Enforcer, which had indeed begun to slowly descend towards the city, suddenly shuddered. Its massive form slowly, agonizingly began to reorient, its nose tilting upwards directly at the expanding rift in the sky on the ship. Batman was a conduit of agony and power, his body burning, his mind locked in a titanic struggle. He was not just piloting a ship. He was becoming the ship, sacrificing himself to steer it on its suicide course. Drax.
"Go!" Oracle's voice commanded, weaker now, but still urgent. "He's done his part. Save yourself."
Drax, battered and grieving, knew what he had to do. He couldn't help Batman now. He roared one last time, a farewell, a lament, then launched himself towards the emergency hatch Batman had prepared. With a final surge of strength, he ripped it open and plunged into the churning,
rainy sky. Below the Conflux Enforcer, now a massive,
glowing projectile ascended, its engines roaring with the death throes of its reactor. It moved with a slow, deliberate majesty, a sacrifice. He's done it. Oracle's voice was barely a whisper, a final, fading gasp. The ship is on course to impact the rift. Goodbye, Jim. Then silence. Oracle was gone. Gordon watched, tears streaming down his face, as the gigantic war barge, an unstoppable force of destruction, soared into the rift. It wasn't an explosion that followed, not a simple blast. It was the implosion, a tearing of reality itself. The rift, already unstable, screamed in protest as the colossal ship, now a contained, hyperdense sphere of energy, collided with its heart. A blinding flash engulfed the sky, far brighter than any sun. The air shrieked, a sound of unimaginable power. Then, with a deafening, reality-bending crack, the rift snapped shut. The dark, swirling clouds dispersed, leaving behind a clear, albeit rain-soaked sky. The moon, scarred but visible, shone through the dissipating mist. The conflux enforcer was gone. The rift was gone. The immediate threat, the alien migration, was averted. Silence. A stunned, absolute silence descended upon Gotham. Gordon stood amidst the rubble, his face streaked with dirt and rain, his uniform tattered. He looked at the sky, then down at his trembling hands. Batman, Oracle, gone. A few moments later, a massive shape landed heavily in the street, sending up a shower of water and debris. Drax, scorched and bleeding but alive, stood amidst the ruins, his red eyes scanning the landscape. He looked up at the spot where the rift had been, then at Gordon, a silent understanding passing between them. "The Masked One," Drax rumbled, his voice low, filled with an unfamiliar solemnity. "He fought with purpose. He destroyed the destroyers." Gordon merely nodded, unable to speak, the grief a raw ache in his chest. The remaining police officers emerged from cover, their faces pale, their eyes wide with shock and awe. They had seen the impossible. They had witnessed salvation. The invading forces, scattered and leaderless, quickly became disorganized. Without Xylos or the Enforcer, their coordinated advance collapsed into panicked flight. Gordon's officers, seeing their chance, moved to engage them, not with desperation, but with a renewed, grim resolve. The fight was still hard, but now it was a fight they could win. Drax watched for a moment, then turned his gaze to the remaining invaders, a flicker of his old, savage eagerness returning. "The lesser monsters still live," he stated, raising his blades. "My purpose here is not yet complete." He moved, a powerful, unstoppable force, continuing his own, brutal war against the remnants of the conflux. Cleaning up the mess he had, in a way, helped create. Gordon watched him go, then turned to Bullock, who stood beside him, equally stunned. "They saved us." "Jim," Bullock whispered, his voice thick. "They actually saved us." Gordon looked at the rising sun, painting the shattered skyline in hues of red and orange. The city was a ruin, scarred and broken, but it was still Gotham, and it was still alive. They had survived.
But at what cost?
He knew that the world would be forever changed. Batman was gone, a silent guardian sacrificed.
Oracle, the voice in the darkness, extinguished.
But their legacy, their sacrifice, had saved them all. He picked up his comms unit, finding it miraculously still working, though now utterly silent. He would miss their voices. "More than words could say." "All right, everyone," Gordon said, his voice raw but firm, echoing through the broken streets. "The immediate threat is over, but the fight isn't finished.
We've got a city to reclaim."
Let's go to work." He looked towards the sky one last time, a silent promise to the fallen. Batman, Oracle, their sacrifice would not be in vain. Gotham would endure. And somewhere, across the stars, Drax the Destroyer would continue his endless war against those who brought destruction. The universe was a dangerous place, but for now, this corner of it was safe. The silence was deafening, but within it, a new, fragile hope began to bloom in the heart of Gotham.